So we are now recording, and I want to officially welcome Rabbi Kaulbach all the way from Peru. Thank you very much for joining us. We so appreciate the time that you're spending with us to introduce us to the Jewish community there and what it's like to be a rabbi, to be a shaliach for the community there. I'm going to put the spotlight on you so we can all see you. And whenever you're ready, please go ahead. I want to just remind everyone else, while I put you all on mute, and Rabbi Kalbach, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Just remind everyone else that questions will be at the end, as we always have. So if you have any questions, and I'm sure you will, please hold off. And after the talk, we'll have time for questions.
Okay, do you want me to start?
Please go ahead. Yes, we're ready.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me share I've only shared my experience for the last 6 months. I moved down on Shlichus 6 months ago under my father-in-law, who has been here for the past 30 years. So bear in mind that, I did my best to research the Jewish history in Peru. It's actually very interesting, something I didn't know before this class. But it's also, I've been here 6 months, so I'm going to have a different, more of a newer look on the Peruvian Jewish community than, so to say, my father-in-law. Jewish history in Peru could date back. I asked my father-in-law. My father-in-law said that some people say it dates back to the time of Shlomo HaMelech, that when Shlomo HaMelech was looking for gold to use in the Beis HaMikdash, he went to a place called Ophir, which it says took 3 years to go there and back. And some people say it was India, and my father-in-law heard that some people say it was in Peru. And there's a lot of, even to this day, there's a lot of gold and silver business in Peru. It attracted a lot of Jews actually since the 1500s. So maybe we could say that that's when the first Jew stepped on Peru in the times of Shlomo HaMelech. But again, that's not recorded, and there's no actual, recorded document about that. What we know about is that in the 1500s, when there was the Spanish Inquisition, a lot of Jews wanted to leave Spain and Portugal because they wanted to practice Judaism. So even though that they converted, they were Marranos and they were forced to convert, they wanted to get away from the Inquisition and be able to practice Judaism in secret, but more free than in Spain. So a lot of them hopped on ships and went with the Spanish to Peru, and more from Portugal, because there was less of a quota. The Spanish used to have quotas they used to call them new Christians, about how many new Christians could leave Spain or Portugal. The Portuguese were less strict about it, so a lot of Jews from Portuguese Jews came to Spain. Once the Spanish realized that a lot of Marranos are doing that, they established an Inquisition in Peru as well, and they started hunting down lots of Jews, and lots of Jews there was Auto de Fe in Lima, and in the center of Lima, there's a building where they say in the basement there was a lot of Jews that were tortured in this basement, and a few hundred Jews between the 1500s to around the 1700s were burnt and persecuted and killed by the Inquisition. So that's until the 1800s. So by the time of the 1800s, where the Spanish lost control and it was more free to be Jewish, the Jewish community came out of hiding, and they established the first synagogue, which still stands today. I think it used to be a religious synagogue. Now it's the Reformed Synagogue, and they call it the 1870. That's the year it was established, and that was the first synagogue. The original Jews don't exist anymore. I'm saying not exist. They don't live here. They passed it on to the Central European Jews who came for business. But they are the ones that established the synagogue. The old Marranos, a lot of them were intermarried. They married, a local woman or a Spanish woman, so they themselves weren't maybe Orthodox Jewish, but they passed it on. They already established a synagogue and passed it on to the Europeans that came after to do business with gold, with silver. A lot of them were in big, had a lot of power over here. We're big in exporting gold and silver to Europe. So that's the first. That's basically the first we know of Jewish people coming. After that, there was another between by the First World War around. A lot of Jews came to escape from Europe and from North Africa as well. And then there was established also a second synagogue and a Sephardic synagogue as well, which are also standing today. There's right now there's three shuls. There's a Sephardic shul, there's a Ashkenazi shul, and there's a Chabad shul, and then there's also the 1870 shul, which is from the beginning. There's also these Jews that came from the First World War. They were more poor Jews. They just wanted to escape the war, and they started establishing communities not outside of Lima. In Trujillo, you would have communities, in Iquitos, in Arequipa, which these are more small towns outside of Lima, and they had their small communities. And they, in like 1940, everyone moved back to Peru, to Lima, because they needed a Jewish education, and there were small communities. So everyone kind of moved back to the center, to Lima, to be together. So now, nowadays, there's really only one Jewish community, and that's in Lima, and it has around 2,000 Jews that are a steady community. That's the history in short of how the Jewish people arrived in Lima and the community that's still standing today. Most of them are from before the war. Some did arrive after the war, but mainly from before the Second World War. Besides for that, there's a lot of, besides for the community, there's a lot of tourists that come every single year to Peru, a lot of Israelis especially. In Lima and in Cusco, there's probably one of the biggest seders, Passover seders in the whole entire world. There's around 800 to 1,000 people. It used to be per year. Because of COVID, of course, last year there wasn't a seder, and 2 years ago as well. But they used to, a lot of Israelis come after the army, and they come for a few months, and so they mainly go to Cusco. But in Lima as well, we have around every Shabbos, we have 30 to 40 people. So basically what it means to be a shliach in Lima is there is, unfortunately, I think all over the world, but in Lima especially, a lot of intermarriage. And there was a lot of debate about who's a Jew and who's not a Jew. And that kind of also, even though it's a very, very small community, there's been a lot of debate in that, because the Jews that did come, they came here as very, very small communities. And it started off with Marranos. So these people, their great-great-grandfathers were Marranos, and they wanted to be Jewish, and they have these traditions of being Jewish, and they came later on to Lima to try to be converted, and they weren't being accepted in the beginning. And there was a rabbi named Mendel Zuber from Israel, and he came down in 1988 to learn with 300 of these Jews. Well, they weren't Jewish then, but he learned this group of 300 Peruvians who came from Marranos, and he learned with them. And in 1991, he brought down a Bezdin from Israel, and I think around 80 or something got converted, and they brought to Israel. So if you go to Israel, there are some Jews that have been converted from Peru. There was actually a few weeks ago, we have a guard. There's a door guard over here. It's not like America where you just go walk into a Chabad or walk into a synagogue. Here, everything you have to. There's a front door and there's a guard, and you have to give ID before you come in. So the guard usually is known that if there is a person with an Israeli citizenship, he lets them in. But if someone has a Peruvian ID or something, then he doesn't just let them in right away. So I got a call that there's someone at the front door, and she has an Israeli passport, but she looks Peruvian. She's not Israeli, of course. So I went out, and there was this woman out. She was a young woman, probably in her 20s or 30s, and she was very, very, distraught and she was crying. And I said, what's going on? And she was like, listen, I moved to Israel 11 years ago. Part of the whole Aliyah thing of Peruvian who came from Iranos and they could go back to Israel. And what happened was my father came sick because of COVID, and I had to fly back to Peru. And now I feel like I'm in between two worlds. I'm not Peruvian because the Peruvians look at me as I'm Israeli, and I moved to Israel, and I'm going through conversion, and I'm not Jew. I don't look Jewish because I look Peruvian. And she was very, very upset. She's like, I didn't eat in a few days. I need kosher food, and no one's letting, I try to contact all the rabbis, and no one got back to me. So I mean, I never knew of these Peruvian Jewish people either, So for me, it was a new thing. So I said, please come in. Let's speak inside. And I got this story. So now I'm getting to know more and more of these little communities in these towns that do have these connections still to Marrano. So even though within the Jewish community, in the established Jewish community in Lima, it's more European Jews, you still have remnants of Marranos in these far off towns that still practice some Jewish traditions. So besides, like I said, there's Israelis. Every single week we have tourists, we have Israelis, especially in the summer now. With COVID, it slowed down, but now there's more and more Israelis coming. In order to accommodate this, there's a few things that are a challenge in Peru. There's food that is a big challenge. There's no shochet over here. There used to be the Sephardic rabbi who was a shochet, but now there's not anymore. There's no, kosher cheese. There's no kosher food really that you want, So my father-in-law had to start that all on his own. Before he came, he said even in the synagogues, they were serving non-kosher food. Like in the Kiddush in the synagogues, they were serving non-kosher food. When my father came here, my father-in-law came here 30 years ago. They were Jewish traditionally, but there was no religious families. So my father-in-law started really bringing kosher food. We bring down a shochet from Mexico or from America once a year, and we slaughter around 20 cows for the community and 5,000 chickens. And we have this big, huge reefer. I have some pictures I could show you after. We have this big, huge frozen container that we keep it all for a year. For cheese also, we go to 4 o'clock in the morning, we go to the dairy farm once a month, and we get our own milk from the cows, and we make our own cheese. Bread, we have a bakery now. So now there's available kosher food. There's kosher bread, there's kosher meat, there's kosher cheese. But it was a challenge really in the beginning. The stories my father-in-law tells me when he was in the beginning of his shlichus about making challahs in a toaster, and in those times also Peru was very, very dangerous. 20 years ago there was terrorism. My mother-in-law used to go to America to give birth because it was very dangerous to give birth and to go to the hospital or to leave with the baby on the street. So it was a very, very different time 30 to 20 years ago. And that's also why the Jewish community became much smaller. A lot of Jews left to Israel or to America because of the danger that there was in 1970, there was a socialist president that was elected, and a lot of Jews left. Nowadays, also there's I don't know if you heard about the Peruvian elections, but it's pretty shaky. A lot of Jews also want to leave Peru now, and it's the Jewish community in Peru is dwindling. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids, even 9-year-olds. I was speaking to one of the people in the shul, and he was telling me that his 9-year-old, who was born in the States, so she's American, her parents are not, was telling her parents that I'm moving to the States. I don't need you to come with me. I have the papers. I'm gonna go move to New York by myself. So even the kids over here, there's a fear over here of COVID and of the political situation. So unfortunately, it's challenging to get people to involve and to get people to want to stay within the community. But we know my father-in-law is still here. We're still here for anyone that is here, and we're doing more. We're trying to start a Jewish school, a Jewish restaurant, a kosher restaurant as well. So for the Jewish people that are here, we could serve them. I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the stuff that we do. If some people don't like looking at raw meat and blood, maybe you shouldn't look, but I'm just going to show you how we do the shechita over here and how we do cheese and all those things. Just give me a moment. If anyone wants to have a few questions, I'm saying while I'm looking for this, you can. Also, I apologize for my rapid speech. I speak very, very fast, so if anyone didn't understand something, I apologize for that. Just a second. Okay. Okay. Fine. So yeah, a big part of my shlichus is the kosher food. So I'm gonna just show you the behind the scenes of what I do. Show my. Am I showing my screen right now?
Yes. We see your screen. Actually, no, we don't see a screen. Oh, now we're seeing it. Perfect.
Okay. So here's a few things. Here's us moving down just to Peru. I just put a few pictures. We have a son. His name is Yerachmiel. My wife gave birth to him in the States, but we moved when he was like around a few months old. So that's us. Solar Sukkot we moved out with. And this is the bakery we have. We make challah every single Shabbos for the community. Around 80, we sell around 80 challahs per week to the Jewish community. To make fish, we go to a factory to get our fish. Just because over here it's not like, there's no kosher supermarkets. If you go to a supermarket and you want to buy fish, they're using the same knives. So we have to go specifically to our own place and get them to make our fish. This is trout. We don't have salmon in Peru. It's a freshwater fish. It's called rainbow trout, and it's very popular in Peru. So that's the factory we go to make our trout. This is just a Purim celebration we did during COVID, which was, it was very, very hard to get people to really even leave and to come, but we did it in our building. We have a rooftop in our building, and this is a mainly Jewish building. Everyone's Jewish in this building, so we said it's just going to be for our building and just for the Jewish people. So we were able to do a Megillah reading. There's a story. This person reading the Megillah, I don't know if you see him on the right. He's from New York. He used to be a chazan. He is a chazan. I'm saying he's the one. And he lives in Arequipa. And so anytime we have a Yom Tiv, he comes and would read the Torah and be a chazan. He speaks here. He's a pilisher that had moved to Peru. We have a lot of people that move to Peru for different types of reasons and stay here. So we get a lot of different colorful people. This is Purim for Brenga we had. This is my father-in-law in the middle with the Ashkenazic rabbi. He's the Ashkenazic rabbi from the other shul. This is how we do our chicken. We do around 5,000, so we do it within a week. And of course, we have to have a sheichet. And then after that, we salt all the chickens, and you have to let it salt for around an hour. So this is, us just laying down our chickens and preparing it. This is how it looks. I don't know if anyone's seen chicken slaughtered, but it's not so pretty. But this is we get a container once a year. It's for all our food that we need imported. So our matzah, our wine. So we have to get a container from the States. So once a year, we split a container with the Jewish community, and half of it goes to us, and half of it goes to the Ashkenazic synagogue, which is called the Sharon. So this is us just going there and splitting it with wine and matzahs and different things for Pesach. This is meat with the cows. We also go to a facility, a plant and we do our own meat. So this is how it looks. This is the slaughterer. Every time after he he kills a cow, he checks his knife to see that there's no nick, and if there was a nick, then the cow would be invalid. In the end of the day, we only really keep half the cow, a little less than half the cow. So if you can see, the ones in back are the things we don't. Those are the bottom of the cow we don't keep because of chelev, because of the fat that we're not allowed to eat, and we only keep the upper half. So you can see with all those, we have little zip ties that we put on the cow's feet to make sure that they're traceable when we come back the next day, so we know that it's still kosher. This is part of the soaking process that the meat has to go through before we're able to eat it. And then we package it. This is the packaging. The next day we come and we watch it be packaged, and we put on our seal, and this is like a final product. How will it look? If you want to zoom in, I'll say the name, and I'll say the 3 rabbis that give the hashgacha, which is the 3 different rabbis in Peru, which is the Rabbi Avram ben Chamu is the Sephardic rabbi, my father-in-law is second law, and then the second, and then the Ashkenaz rabbi is third, and then I just sign to make sure that it's traceable as well. Let's see if I can go back. This is how the chicken looks in the end. And yeah, then, I mean, there's a lot of facilities over here that are kosher. And for example, this is a person who's from Canada, and he opened up a chocolate factory here, and we help him give a supervision to it. So before Pesach, we gave him matzah, and we told him to sell his chametz, and he sold the chametz of the whole factory as well. So he wouldn't have chametz on Pesach. There's different places that also we visit. Me and my wife usually visit the facilities together. She's my translator and my helper. She's from here, she speaks Spanish. So, different places, especially if we need to make our own food, like our own chocolate, we have to go to the factory to make sure that it's kosher. Because this is the milking of the cows, how we get our milk. We go to a dairy farm and we check the cows, we milk them, we bring it back, we add the whey or vinegar, and we make mozzarella, and we make different types of cheeses. This is mozzarella, for example. Mozzarella. And this is how it comes out in the end. Yeah, this is how the challah works. There's a few different rabbis that come from the States over here to do supervisions, and I usually meet them. For example, this is his name is Rabbi Eckstein from Brooklyn. He's a very respected rabbi in kosher. So when we go to facilities, I usually meet these rabbis as well. And that's about it. I don't know if anyone has questions. I would be happy to answer them.
Well, that was very, very interesting. I guess I can start off with a couple of questions. What is the general standard of living like in Peru compared to America, for example, the United States?
I can compare it to living in New York City because I lived there before. Mm-hmm. So I could directly compare it to that. The standard of living is much better over here for the amount of for example, we had a 1-bedroom apartment in New York, and for that price, we're able to get a 3-bedroom apartment, something that's much, much nicer. So you can have a maid, for example. A maid would cost you 50 soles a day, which is around, you're paying $15 a day to have someone that works for 11 hours. It's 11-hour days, and you're paying $15.
If I can interrupt you for a second, what is the standard of living like for the maid?
So there's different. Some maids live with you, so they have a great standard of living. They eat with you, they do everything with you, they're living. And the other ones, they live a happy life. I was speaking to my maid the other day, and I was asking her about her life, and they're very, very happy. They're happy to work, and they're happy to work. Like, they want to work, and they want to work their 11-hour days, and they want to go home and then have a drink as well. So they're having the same life like anyone, just on a lower level, but they're living the same.
So things like electricity and air conditioning, internet, service and things like that? Is that pretty much everyone has access to it?
So heating and air conditioning is you don't really have unless you go to hotels, just because it gets hot in the summer and it gets cold in the winter because they're not insulated either. Electricity is more expensive in the States. So like, for example, we don't have a heater, we don't have an air conditioner, just because also the houses don't come with it. But a cell phone service is not, it's patchy here and there, depends which, but that's yeah, it's not like the States, but it's fine, it's livable, it doesn't really hinder our life in any way.
And I think you touched upon safety and crime. Maybe you can describe what that's like in a little more detail.
I can try. So I'll tell you also, I was speaking to someone yesterday about this, and they were telling me Peru, they want to leave Peru because it's so dangerous and they feel they can't let their kids, play on the street. And I was asking them, like, I don't feel that way at all. I feel very safe here. For example, there's really no anti-Semitism over here. None at all. People respect you for being Jewish. There's crime because people are poor and they want, if you're wearing something nice, they're going to want it. So they always say, don't, if you're going to go to this community or this neighborhood, don't wear jewelry, don't have your phone in public. But if you're not wearing something very fancy and you're just minding your own business, then I feel very, very safe. And they were telling me, they're like, wow, they're like, maybe because you look like a rabbi, so they respect you. They're like, if we walked in the same neighborhood, we wouldn't feel safe. They're like, you do, maybe because you wear a hat and you have a beard. So I told them, like, okay, you should wear a hat and you should grow a beard and you'll feel safer. So I felt safer here than I feel in New York City. I used to live on Utica Avenue, and it's not like I felt unsafe, but when I walked at nighttime, it was, if you see someone walking towards you, you kind of, the stories that happen in Brooklyn, you're a little nervous. Here, I don't feel it at all. There's a lot of security. Of course, I haven't been, anywhere unsafe at nighttime, but I don't feel, I feel like it's safe.
Very, very interesting. Let's ask for questions from the audience.
I have a question.
Please.
Sure one.
Hi. So, actually, a bunch of questions. My first one is there any religious education for the kids?
That's something I missed. Yes, there is a Jewish school that was established in the 1950s around. It's called Leon Pinello, and it's actually named after a Spanish family of three brothers that were very influential in Spain, Peru, and in South America in general. The bulk of the Jewish community, especially the older one, went through that school, and it was a very good Jewish education as well as a secular education. So you would have a lot of the people that said that they're now in their 50s, but when they went through school, they learned Hebrew and they learned all about Judaism and secular as well. Nowadays, there's much less people in that school. It's a very, very big school. It could fit probably 1,000 students. Right now, there probably is around 200 students in it. Of that, I don't know, some of them are Jewish, some of them are not. And it's just a lot of politics within the school, and the Jewish education is not as important, or as it's not as first as it used to be. So I wanted to contact the people and see if I can maybe teach there a little bit or give a class once in a while, and that's a work in progress. I would like to maybe be more involved, but I'm not familiar enough with that school. But there is a Jewish school, but I don't know how much Judaism they instill in their students, and how. Yeah.
Second question, can I ask?
Sure.
So, I'm sure this situation occurs, my guess would be often. Someone walks in, says shalom, and you talk a little bit, and you have a question about whether they're Jewish. So in the conversation, the person says, of course I'm Jewish. My father was Jewish. His parents were Jewish, and I don't know, but his mother was not Jewish. So for decades, this person thought that he is really Jewish. How do you handle this situation when it's probably prevalent, probably occurs very often, and people genuinely think they're Jewish, but halachically they're not?
It's a very tough situation. It's very tough, and it's also different. It's different how I grew up with this situation and how it's actually dealt with in Peru, because where I grew up, it wasn't as big of an issue. So it wasn't. We didn't have to. My father, for example, didn't have such a strong stance about it. Over here, it's very, very. It's a very big problem if you invite, let's say, a non-Jew to your house for a Friday night meal, because since it's such a big problem over here, when you invite them, you're kind of showing that you accept it. And in the beginning, I kind of didn't understand that as much, but since it's such a big problem in Peru, it's really, it's been a problem for the past 30 years. And my father-in-law could tell you much more stories of a lot of fights, and this person going to this rabbi, and then if this rabbi didn't want to, went to a different rabbi. So it's a very, very sensitive subject, especially even within conversions, because some rabbis will accept one conversion and some rabbis would not accept it. But it's very, very sensitive, and it's something that I try not to involve myself in.
And counting.
It's a big problem over here, and it's very hard to.
Counting people per million?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's something that it's a big problem over here, and there's been a lot of issues because of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not simple.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
You say you make all the food and you figure out how much you need. Do you do it more than once a year? All the food?
So we do it once a year. Usually we do enough for the whole year.
Wow. To figure that out, that's unbelievable.
Well, we try to do a little more. We don't do exactly. We try to do a little, something that will last a little longer than a year. But if we do need to do it more often, then we can. It's a small world these days. You could fly someone in, you could arrange it. It's not as hard as it used to be. So it just takes work. But we haven't had that problem yet. Usually we get low, and then it always ends up happening. Thank God.
Okay. So do you have kosher restaurants there, or one kosher restaurant?
As of now, there's no kosher restaurant. There used to be a kosher store called Bubba's Kitchen that's closed because of COVID. So right now there's no kosher store. The Chabad has a kosher bakery, and you could buy some food staples. But there's no restaurant, so to say, that you could, have a menu where you order something. We try to accommodate people that, let's say we're coming from the States and we want to, order a schnitzel sandwich or a hamburger, and we'll make it for them. But there's no organized type of restaurant.
Are there Jewish products in grocery stores and things like that? There's
some more. You could buy, let's say, you could buy some OU products and some OK products in some supermarkets that import them. Not so much, but there is getting more and more. But it's also more expensive. You're going to be, when you're buying something that's imported, it's going to be expensive. So in general, the Jewish community in general doesn't really use so much those products.
Okay.
Okay.
We were in Lima 30 years ago. We adopted a child, and we enjoyed. We want to express our hakaras hatov to the Chabad. They were so helpful to us at that time. Oh, he froze.
Yeah, what was the name of the shaliach back in
1991?
1991.
Who's speaking right now? I can't.
That's us. You see us?
On the Zoom.
Sure.
Anyway, we're.
Oh,
MOA. I see MAO.
Yeah, MAO.
My father-in-law was a shliach then.
So
Rabbi
that
Blumenfeld.
Rabbi Blumenfeld. Okay.
What's his name? Uri or is it? It's Zalman?
Uri. Uri's his first name. They call him Uri. Yeah.
Oh,
Shneir
Uri,
Zalman.
Uri.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So he was very helpful to my
Yeah,
wife,
yeah, he was
especially
very helpful.
I had to leave. After 2 months there, I left and came back to the States, and my wife was there on her own for a month. And so your father-in-law was very helpful. I don't know if he remembers us, but if he does, you can.
Let me get what's your name? I'll let him know.
Olovich.
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 Yeah. So
1991. I'm gonna let him know.
it was
Yeah.
it was
Oh, look at that.
also
Yeah.
the
Our son is married. He lives in Colel, you know, and he's in Colel, and he has 2 children.
Wow.
so anyway.
Yeah, we
How was Peru in those? You could tell me what I was. I wasn't there. How was Lima in 1991?
It was somewhat scary because they at that time they had the shining path, and they were you could sometimes at night you could sometimes hear explosions, but actually we didn't feel unsafe really, you know, but there were, you know, it was a tense time in those days.
Yeah, like I said, in those days, my mother-in-law would go to the States to give birth. Their electricity was
Yeah.
being cut off here and there. Yeah, it used to be a very dangerous place.
Yeah, but
Thank God now.
anyway, it was an adventure, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Anyway, we are
It was
thankful to
very
Chabad.
interesting. Yeah.
Also, the Ashkenazi rabbi at that time was very helpful, Rabbi Kraus.
Kraus, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, in general, how it works with the Ashkenazic synagogue, that the rabbi changes every few years. Right now, there's a different rabbi called Simon Tov Negri, but they switch every few years their rabbi.
Yeah.
So they've been through, like 6, 7 rabbis. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Where is the nearest Jewish, like strong Jewish community? Would that be in Brazil?
Strong Jewish community. There's there's one in Panama. There's a strong Jewish community in Panama. But Brazil, Argentina, those are the main. Brazil, Argentina, Panama are the closest. Venezuela are the closest strong Jewish communities. The ones around us have small, like Ecuador, Bolivia, Colombia have small Jewish communities. But yeah, the big ones are Brazil, Argentina, Panama. Right.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Well, I want to thank you so much, Rabbi Kalbach. It's been very educational and very interesting. And I want to wish you a lot of success. You should have a lot of good health, blessings, and success in all of the important work that you do. And we should meet again, God willing, at happy occasions.
God willing. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And thank you for everyone.
Thank you.
Hi, Barbara, Marty.
Hello. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Okay.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.
Good health to all.
Bye-bye.